Good evening, and welcome to the College of Coastal Georgia. For those of you whom I have not had the pleasure to meet, my name is Michelle Johnston, and it is a privilege to have you here on our campus this evening. And as president of the college, it has been an incredible experience to work with a set of very talented, very dedicated people to deliver our multi-part speaker series this year. And it started back in March, so we've had quite the journey. This series has been the brainchild of a group of trustees from the college's foundation board, and it is through the conception and the design of Meredith Magnus, Darren Peach, and Burt Roten that have made tonight possible. Their work was supported by our former board chair, Wayne Johnson, and was continued with our current chair, Greer Brown. Our college's advancement staff, led by Jamie Bissett, has been there every step of the way to get the word out and to provide all of the behind-the-scenes work that is required to pull off a night like this that is really meaningful for all of us. And I hope that you had a chance to visit with some of our presidential student ambassadors as you came in this evening. They are awesome. They are our own students. They're wonderful. So as I shared in my remarks back in March at the first installment of this series, our purpose here is to encourage conversation, to encourage thought and questions. And we've seen that it's really working. So leading up to tonight's event, I've been reflecting back over the last year that I've been here in Brunswick. And I'm so impressed with the passion and the commitment of the community's civic leaders and public servants as they talk about and plan for the future of Brunswick. So I'm inspired by their shared vision of preserving what is best about this historic city, while moving it forward into a brighter and a more prosperous future. And I believe the college will play an important role in making that vision a reality. We recognize that the success of the college is very much tied to the success of this region. And as Brunswick thrives, the college will be able to offer our students an ever more vibrant college experience. We are committed to playing our part and helping the flourishing future of Brunswick to unfold. So many people, when I'm out in the community, tell me how they see the college as just a tremendous resource for Brunswick and the Golden Isles, and I agree. Our students have contributed over 11,000 hours this year alone in service to the community through our service learning courses. And our students graduate and are prepared to serve as leaders in business and education and healthcare and hospitality and criminal justice and coastal ecology and beyond. The list goes on. And our newest baby, our newest brand new degree program that we will be rolling out, it's the only one of its kind among the 26 institutions in the University System of Georgia. And it's a bachelor's degree in data science. We're really excited about that. So before our panel is introduced, I'd like to thank Communities of Coastal Georgia Foundation President and CEO Paul White and Communications Director Anna Hall for their support of this event. They hosted an event last night that focused on Forward Brunswick and New City Brunswick. And like tonight, that meeting space was packed. And I really liked the way that Burt Roten captured it. He said, Forward Brunswick is a civic-level vehicle for engagement. There's a lot packed into that, but it's about movement. And if you were there, you heard Justin Calloway talk about the action orientation of New City Brunswick, focusing on bringing about a residential renaissance downtown. So thank you again for coming tonight. I hope to see you back on campus very soon. In fact, we have a scholarship gala here not next week, but on Thursday, October the 10th. So it's still a couple of weeks away that evening. And it's part of a week-long celebration of the college that culminates with the presidential investiture on the morning of Friday, October the 11th at 10:30. So This is a personal invitation that I'm extending to you to come to the gala, be a part of supporting our students. Scholarships are incredible to make this education possible. So many of you already support our scholarships, and thank you for doing that. But it'll be a great night for the college, and then to be here in this room on Friday morning, October the 11th, to celebrate the college. So more details are available on our website, and you can get tickets and all those kinds of things. But the point is, please don't be a stranger. This is a very special college, and this is your college. So I would like to, at this time, invite Foundation Trustee Darren Peach to come to the stage and introduce our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, President Johnston. Thank you. So if I move this mic up, can everyone hear me all right? So before we get started, it's wonderful to look out and see this large crowd, but we have one special guest tonight that I want to recognize, and this is his third time with us this year. He's been in the front row every time, but I'd like to recognize Bill Brown and thank him for his continuous support and interest. He has passed the century mark, and he has never ceased in being committed to Brunswick and this community. So thank you so much for tonight, Bill. You are an inspiration to us all, and really greatly appreciate the chance to have you here tonight, so thank you. So as President Johnston mentioned, we three of us started talking about this back in December of last year, and we sat down at the table over in the cafeteria, and we said, hey, we really want to find a topic that brings the community together and that a lot of people are interested in. And at the time, there were some discussions going on about downtown Brunswick and the potential of Brunswick, and it just seemed natural that that would be a good topic. So with that in mind, we started working on our plans to attract a lot of interest. And we really established goals for the speaker series, which aren't terribly different from what we've done in the past, but I think we tried to solidify and make sure they made sense. So the first is to identify topics of interest in the community and attract the most high-profile speakers. The second is to generate interest in the community for each event. And the third is to raise awareness of the positive impact of the college in the community. And it seemed natural that this would be a forum to bring people with different views together, but also people that were wanting to learn more and wanting to consider all the different options and things that they needed to know. And so as I look out into the crowd and I see more people than we had in previous events, I feel like largely we have accomplished that and probably exceeded it in many ways because of some of the things that are going on in the community. So thank you so much for being here tonight and supporting everything that people are trying to do in this community. So round of applause, please. So before I introduce our moderator, and he'll introduce our panelists tonight, I just want to do a little recap because we are sitting here in a learning institution, and so we're supposed to learn something, right? So first of all, I just want to go back to our March 21st event and just talk about a couple things that Ryan Gravel mentioned that I think are hugely important and we want to think about and remember tonight. First is having a big idea is great, but it must resonate with all people and include economic opportunity for all of those people. The second is the big idea can't come from government leaders or developers. It must come from the community, and the community must own it, okay? Remember those. Those are very important. So our second speaker, and by the way, the topic with Ryan, who basically invented or came up with the concept of the Beltline in Atlanta, was what the power of a big idea could mean for Brunswick. So Martin O'Hara came to us, and he brought his experience basically revitalizing port cities in the UK, and he brought the tale of two cities Brunswick and Ipswich, which really kind of touched on a lot of the things that we appreciate about Brunswick and could see then what the future potential would be. So Martin highlighted two things that really resonated. The first is work toward common goals. Communities typically agree on 75% of what should be done, so get started on this instead of getting stuck on what we don't agree on. Okay, that sounds like common sense, maybe. The second is, it is better to achieve good than hold out for perfection and get nothing. So I think, again, very important points. They both covered a lot of other things that we really we learned, but I think those are things that we should take into tonight's discussion. So as I said, Bert Roten, and just to give you a little background on Bert, Bert spent his career as a professional journalist. He said at one time that he was retired. That is not true. He did apparently retire from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, although he still writes for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. But we're very, very grateful to have he and his lovely wife Melinda here in our community now. They still spend a lot of time elsewhere in the world and the country, but they call the Golden Isles home, and we're grateful to have them. So Bert will moderate, and then we will have 6 panelists who will be introduced by Bert. You also are asked to write down your questions. There should be cards available to do that, and make sure that those get passed to the appropriate person before we enter the last segment. So with that, I will ask Bert to come out and join us.
Thank you. Panelists, come on out. The panelists will actually introduce themselves. It's not because I couldn't remember all this stuff. It's just I want them to hear their voices. How many people were there last night at the... Wow. We won't cover the same stuff, although we may ask you to fill in the rest of the people on what you heard last night. Okay. I've got a couple of things I want to say, but let's go ahead and introduce the panel, starting with Josh there on the end.
Hey, I'm Josh Rogers. I'm the president and CEO of Newtown Macon from Macon, Georgia. Newtown is the downtown development nonprofit in Macon, and we've had a lot of ideas exchanged with Brunswick already, and I'm excited to be here and talk more about what our experience has been. I think we faced as long odds as anyone in the entire country in revitalizing our downtown, and today we've got 56 restaurants, 23 bars and music venues, and 648 loft apartments in a thriving downtown. We've got a lot more work left to do, but I'm happy to share what's gotten us to this point.
I'm Matthew Hill, Director of the Brunswick Downtown Development Authority, and it is great to see so many people interested in downtown and the surrounding area. It's been a lot of years since we've had this much interest, and we're very excited about it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Therese Hamilton. I'm the CEO for Coastal Georgia Area Community Action Authority. We are a nonprofit organization that works with our low-income families and children within a 9-county area. Right here in Glenn County, this is our home office. The state is right here, right down the road. We're neighbors. And so what we do is we work with our families in order to ensure that our families move towards having a better quality of life.
Hi, I'm Maggie Wilks Conrad. I'm the owner of Maggie Mae's Downtown Cafe and the Southern Hangar. I've been in downtown for over 16 years now and absolutely love it. I look forward to seeing all the changes and all the growth that's coming our way.
Hi, I'm Michael Kaufman with Kaufman Development Group. We've been involved in downtown for a few years, and what we've primarily been doing has been buying some of the older vacant buildings that have been sitting there for, in some cases, decades, renovating them, repurposing them. And for the first 3 buildings that we had, I'm proud to say we had renovated them and got them to 100% occupancy until we bought our 4th building a few months ago. Now we're working to get that occupancy rate back up, but have been trying to get downtown going.
So I'm Jeff Clark. I'm the Street Outreach Director for Safe Harbor Children's Center. And I'm also the Glenn County Coordinating Entry Service Director. My job is basically to make sure that housing for homelessness or any housing opportunity that comes through other agencies or through funding from HUD or DCA is distributed through these agencies so that housing will be provided for homelessness.
Thanks. You'll give them a round of applause. I mean, it's actually a big deal to be willing to get up and speak in front of a big group like that. Who here is a professional speaker? And so it's a lot to do, and I'm proud of them for the preparation they've done for this, and I think you'll see it as we get going. You'll notice the absence of elected officials up here, and that's not because we disdain elected officials. You know, we love them deeply, all the way to the top. And what we wanted to do with this particular session was to focus on people who are having real experiences in the trenches of Brunswick, or places that have had experiences that are really relevant. We heard through the first two presentations, essentially, we loved it. When are you going to talk about Brunswick? And so that has sort of driven us to think about it this way. And I'm really proud of this group, and I think you'll have a wonderful experience tonight. Do come up with some great questions. We've set aside quite a bit of time at the end for your questions. You don't want to hear me talk any more than you have to, although I always have to laugh when I hear the words professional next to the word journalist, particularly when it refers to me, but I can fill space with noise. So back in March when Ryan Gravel he came down right before the event and walked around Brunswick. And I'm not sure what he was expecting. The impression I got is that he was expecting something like Beirut. Because there was an afternoon, and Darren was there, where we walked from Hanover Square down Newcastle and stopped right by where Reed's Apothecary is now. It was sort of busily getting ready. It wasn't quite open yet. And we stopped, and he sort of surveyed the area and looked over toward the marina and the water. And he said, this isn't what I was expecting at all, which begs the question, what were you expecting, Ryan? He said, there's a lot here. And he said this phrase that keeps coming up. He says, this place has great bones. And I think if you look at Brunswick, it does have great bones. I don't know what it will take to get some sinew and muscle and everything else you need to make a fully live creature from all that, but the place has got a lot there. I think one of the driving forces behind this discussion and the discussion you heard last night is that we don't want to wake up in 20 years and say Brunswick still has a lot of potential. I think this is a time when we can stop, turn, and really do something. Just a couple more things. So, I've been thinking a lot about Brunswick and towns like Brunswick, and there's a wonderful book that I recommend. It's called Our Towns: A 100,000-Mile Journey into the Heart of America, and it was written by James Fallows, and he and his wife got in a single-engine airplane and spent years and just flew from small town to small town, and talked to the people there. They even went to St. Mary's. I mostly talked about how funny we talk down here. But they went from small town to small town, medium-sized towns. A lot of them were Rust Belt places. A lot of them had, at some point, were a lot happier places than they are now. And at the end of that, James Fallows came up with a very succinct description of what he saw and what he and his wife saw in towns that were really on the rise. And I'll quote that to you just for a little context. We quickly noticed traits that we eventually learned to associate with towns on the rise. Residential buildings and new hotels, multiple restaurants and a brewery, viable stores that are not part of a national chain, corporate headquarters that have moved downtown, a nearby college student base. That's not too far from what we have here. And so those ingredients are rare, and I think that's to some degree what Ryan was talking about. He didn't realize all that was here. And one more person's vision of what a town like this could be like. This is a Georgia novelist named Mary Kay Andrews. which will make my wife laugh because we know her personally and her true name, which I won't share here because there's some reason she's taken this novelist name. My perfect coastal town isn't a fancy resort or glitzy planned community. It's a place with a hometown grocery that is decent meat, seafood, and a deli, a couple of ice cream shops, a handful of good restaurants, where the dress code is no shoes, no shirt, no problem. We may want to talk about the dress code a little bit because we are fancier than that. But both of those descriptions carry a sense of authenticity, that this is a manufactured place. It is a place that comes up from its own soul and its own sort of sense of itself. So that's just something I wanted to sort of get out there before we get going. And so now I'm going to, let's see what we can do with these panelists. So one of the things that James Fallows mentioned, in fact, the first thing he mentioned was residents downtown. And Josh, I know that that's been the focus of what you've been doing in Macon. And I wanted you to reflect a little bit on how you came to that sort of point of view and how that's working out.
Yeah, we had James Fallows come speak in Macon not long ago as part of a speaker series, and he's amazing, and it's a really good book, and it gives you a lot of hope despite some of the national
Darren, make
challenges.
a note for next year.
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
He's fantastic. Yeah, so in Macon, when Newtown got started, the most obvious problem we had was there were no businesses in our storefronts, right? All the storefronts were empty. And so we spent about 10 years and over $1 million giving people grants to open businesses in the vacant storefronts, and we ended up with 0 net new businesses at the end of that campaign. The adage is retail follows rooftops, and what you need to fill storefronts more than businesses is shoppers. And so in 2011, we did a market study that showed we could fill 200 units of loft housing a year if we built it, and that year only 11 got built. So we had a total of about 28 units in all of downtown. And so we really decided to flip the equation at that point. If all the demand was for the vacant upper floors, what can we do to incentivize developers to make sure that they're producing those loft units? So we started a subordinate financing program where we offer up to 100% financing for any minority developer who's going to develop real estate downtown, and up to 40% for a non-minority developer. And really launched almost overnight this incredible wave of residential housing development. And like I said, we've gone from 28 units to now 648, and I expect we'll be at over 1,000 units by 2022. We're still running a little short of what the demand is, and so we're constantly focused on how we can increase unit production, and that's included building some ourselves. The great thing about that is that building the residential housing turned to be the most effective strategy to fill the storefronts as well. So in the year 2012, less than half of our storefronts were full. Today we're at 70%, and based on what's under construction and already leased, we'll be at 85% by the end of 2020. So residential is a key factor in a revitalized downtown and also in sustainability. If you want that 24/7 street life, if you want the diversity of retail tenants that symbolize an entire walkable community where you really don't need a car, you've got to have a basis of residential housing. Here's another key thing I'll say. If you want to recruit these major employers, the old way of doing economic development was you recruit an employer and people move there to take the jobs. That does not work anymore. People pick a place to live before they have a job to do, and I bet that's why a lot of you are here on the coast. And so if you want some major employers to move into downtown Brunswick, you've got to have a residential population that they're chasing. I had a conversation just a few weeks ago with forestry resource consultants. You would think of that as a super traditional, older employee base, and they're struggling to recruit young people. And they came to see me. They're moving their headquarters downtown because they know if they're walking distance to lofts, they can get younger people to come work for them. It's true in every industry.
So I was struck by the phrase that you can't quite keep up with the demand, which must be is a happy place to be.
Yeah, I mean, as an economic developer, our challenges never go away, they just change. And so a lot of the challenges we're dealing with now are some of our success and also with keeping up with demand. Because we're not keeping up with demand, prices have gotten really high. So a 500 square foot unit in downtown Macon is going to run you $1,000 a month, $2 a square foot a month. That's a really strong price. And that's because we don't have enough supply to meet demand. It's also because our lofts are really, really cool and incredibly fun. But yeah, the other thing I'd say about residential space is you want to make sure that you're matching the market. And so we pay about $30,000 every 5 years to update our market study to make sure that we're building what the number that's needed and the type of housing that's needed. Because early on in downtown Macon, a developer built a set of lofts that were 2,400 square feet that resembled suburban garden apartments, and they didn't rent. And so we spent a generation, Ralph and I were talking about this earlier, with everybody saying, well, housing doesn't work downtown. How many times have you heard that? How many times have you heard, well, that doesn't work, we tried it. We tried it in the 70s, we tried it in the 80s, we tried it in the 90s, doesn't work. And so you've got to have a lot of discipline to actually build exactly the product that people want. And once you make that match, it is off to the races. I mean, we really can't build them fast enough. Our occupancy rate stays between 95 and 100%.
So, Maggie, this is your first question. So when you hear this idea of people living here, I mean, you're the one on the stage who makes a living based on the street trade in downtown Brunswick. How does that sound to you? What does that make you think of?
A lot more traffic. So, I mean, I'm very excited. Downtown's busy now, but we could do so much more. So we need a lot to draw them in, though. We need a few more things for them to do. To keep them busy, to keep them occupied, to keep them wanting to come into downtown and to want to stay there, not to go anywhere else. So,
what kind of things do you think would be good for that?
Maybe a few more functions. First Friday is great. It's amazing. We have the best time. People come from all over to come participate, and it's a lot of fun. But we need more fill-in. I want to get people excited to be down every night of the week or every weekend, not just First Friday. You know, come in and hang out all weekend and venture around all the businesses.
Yeah.
There's lots of good stuff down there and lots more coming. So.
Okay. And also, everybody, you don't have to wait for me to ask a question. If you feel like you got to say something, just raise your hand, grab a mic, get physical with the person next to you. Either way is fine. Jeff, when you hear about this kind of development and the prices we're talking about, what does that make you think about for being able to have a diverse community downtown of people of all sorts of income levels?
So as I hear what's being said, I go back to think I'm actually a native of Brunswick. Was born and raised here. The best thing about Brunswick is not what you see; it's the people that live here. One of my concerns is ideally when you have a market that has a ceiling like that you're going to eliminate a lot of individuals that were born and raised here. And that's one of the problems we have in Brunswick, is that our generational kids are wind up leaving, not just for employment, because we don't have activities that pull them in. I think when we're talking about raising or doing structures, having a great building, that's fine. A lot of the investment has to be within the people. But ideally, we need to look at something that's a mixed market, to where we're allowing individuals to grow within their own area, not pushing them away from where they were born and raised. That would be my concern as a native here, that if I wasn't employed, I couldn't afford to actually live in the place that I grew up. And we want to be inclusive and not exclusive.
So Michael, as the one who's down here trying to develop all sorts of things, how does that sound to you? I mean, how do you think about the breadth of the need of housing and that sort of thing?
Well, I completely agree with Jeff. I think we need, first and foremost, and I know Darren said this earlier, but community buy-in is essential. We're not trying to gentrify downtown. We're trying to look at the community that's there and figure out how to find that 75% of stuff that everyone agrees on and make it better. If you look in downtown Brunswick right now, there's not a grocery store. The only place to get a bottle of water after 8 p.m. was CVS until that closed a few months ago. There's not services down there, and a lot of times people say, well, you don't have a dry cleaner, you don't have a department store, a place to go get a sandwich. But that's not the issue. The issue is getting the bodies down there. And to Maggie's point earlier, I mean, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, Brunswick's bustling. You're going to have a hard time finding a parking spot out front of where you want to go. You're going to have to park in the back of the building, which I think is good because we're getting a little more traffic down there. But come 5:05 p.m. any day of the week, it starts turning into a ghost town. If you go down there on Sunday, for example, I know Reed's Apothecary does a Sunday brunch. I think there's another spot in the south end of Newcastle that does. But other than that, it's desolate. And it's not the one day of the month, first Friday, get everyone down there. Those are fantastic, but it's the every day of the week crowd that you need. You need people walking out and going downstairs to get an ice cream cone. You need people going down the street just to go window shop and see what their friends are doing. You need an involved community of people, and that's going to be a diverse community. Brunswick itself is a very diverse community, especially if you go a few miles outside of that. Look at the surrounding areas, St. Simons, Jekyll, Glenn County as a whole. We have a fantastic pool of people that we really need to bring in, and it starts with the Brunswick community.
So Therese, the issue of community buy-in and making sure that the full breadth of the community takes part in this, and that I think, as Martin O'Hara said during his presentation, that they plan with us rather than us planning for them. What's your sense of that?
I think Martin was very correct in that, and I have to agree with both Jeff and Michael. It's great that we want to do development and the economic development. However, what we don't want is for the economic development to cause an economic divide. And when we talk about, and I took a tour of those lofts, it was absolutely beautiful. However, if the citizens that we have here now are not able to afford that, then it appears to me that what we're looking to do is we're looking to bring in an influx of new residents, which is great, which is what we need, which is thriving. However, we also have to make sure that those residents that are currently there are in a position that they are able to continue to live in Brunswick economically. We don't want the things to be, our economics and prices to get so high that the divide is wider than what it is. And so I think it's very important that we get buy-in from everyone, from all aspects of it, not just only those that are looking to develop, but those that are residents here, those that are living here, that have been here for generations. I was born and raised here myself, and I love this city absolutely to death. I want to see the city flourish and thrive. However, I don't want to see it to do that on the backs of those that are here.
Matthew, you're unfortunately you're the government guy here.
I'm quasi-government.
Quasi-government
right
guy. So when you hear this discussion, so what are the thoughts going on? I mean, how do we assure that we can have this kind of growth in this town, and take care of these other issues, make sure it's growth that helps everyone?
Well, I think that's something people in the city, and then with New City Brunswick too, we're very cognizant of that we have to have housing that fits a variety of needs. Everybody doesn't want to live in a loft that's $2 a square foot right downtown. Some people might want to live in a shotgun house. And that's one of the advantages to downtown and Old Town and New Town, is we have a wide variety of housing stock there that can suit a wide variety of not only economic structure, but also what type of place you want to live in. And the other thing that Jeff said was about the people. Brunswick is a city with a lot of character. I like character better than good bones. But it also has a lot of characters in it. And, Brunswick is not a place for everybody. And I don't think it ever wants to be a place for everybody. It's a special place that we need to be aware of and not do away with that character.
So I think that's an interesting point, because one of the sort of underlying themes of the folks I quoted early on, and also what you read a lot about, is this sense of authenticity, this sense of place. Everybody, Josh, you may be excused from this unless you just want to jump in. What is it that distinguishes Brunswick? If you were to say what does the Brunswick DNA look like, what is it? By the way, this is a question they weren't expecting, so let's see how they do.
The native should answer.
So being a native, I, I celebrate Brunswick because of the individuals that I grew up with and the people that I came in contact with. And over the years, I used to work for a gentleman named Mr. Eisenberg, Joe Eisenberg, which Mr. Brown would constantly, they would visit and have conversation. They were friends. So Brunswick's a small town that individuals get to know other individuals, and they learn how to resource and create something that's unique. And you know, bigger cities don't offer the uniqueness that individuals get to know other individuals, whether they live on the island or whether they live downtown. And they get to create a relationship that's useful. And that's one thing I've experienced over the years. I've grown to know a lot of people of all ages, and I've had benefited from the resources that they provide and the individuals that lived here.
Really put us on the spot there.
Yeah. I
I'd
warned
say-
you.
I'd say, to me, what really makes Brunswick unique is the perseverance of all of the individuals that have been working to get downtown and the surrounding areas where they need to be. Like you mentioned, or as someone mentioned earlier, we could say we tried that before, it doesn't work. Tried that before, it doesn't work. I think everybody who has any role in Brunswick has a story like that, yet they're still here, they're still at the table, and it's people that are really passionate about this city. One of the first groups that I got involved with down here was Skip Mounts put together a group called the Million Cups. It's local business leaders that get together once a month and just tell their story. Some of them are starting new and need help. Others have been there for a while and are looking for advice or to share wisdom. But it is a passionate group of people. And these are people that have been through the ringer. They have been promised all kinds of things over the last 10, 20, 30 years, and most of which have not been delivered. And they're still here, they're still at the table, and they're still fighting to move Brunswick forward. So I think it's a really strong group of passionate people that are persevering.
Variety makes us special. I think everybody feels welcome into downtown. There are no limitations. We see everybody the same, especially my place. I have such a huge variety of people that are in every day that talk and network and enjoy each other's company. And it's really amazing to watch because you go other places and people are separated by race or religion, or we don't have that. Everybody's special and everybody feels welcomed, and that's the way that it should be. It's that down home feeling. So.
By the way, and this isn't a commercial message, but if you really do want to see Brunswick, go to Maggie Mays in the morning. It's fascinating. And the service is not bad.
Most days.
I think that Brunswick is very unique. Brunswick, to me, Brunswick is the perfect small, big town. Because if you look around, everybody in here, and I noticed it standing out front, everyone knows pretty much almost everyone. And so it's the meet and greet no matter where you are. So we all know each other. A lot of us grew up together, but even it's just the fact that we have a heart, and I think Brunswick, and I say Brunswick, but I'm Glenn County, period. We have a heart. We have a heart for each other. We have a heart for the community, and all we want is for our community to be better. That's it.
We get a lot of people in the Old City Hall looking for tourism information, and the one thing that comes back again and again is how friendly people are. Well, some of that is because we're a southern town. Brunswick is a southern town. I'm obviously not southern, but
You're starting to sound a little bit.
a little bit. It's been like 20 years.
Yeah.
I think another 20 years, and you might call me a native.
Yeah.
But you know, when I first started at the DDA, one of the things that struck me was you'd have people like Mr. Brown going around and collecting rent in person from his tenants, and Mr. Brown is 85 years old. And we'll stop and talk to people, and you know, Ms. Kate, who's not with us anymore, who lived down the street from me, would stand on the sidewalk and talk to strangers for hours, telling them about Brunswick and how it was when she was a little girl. And I think that's something that's kind of unique to Brunswick. I've been to a lot of other cities, and a lot of times I'll try to talk to a clerk or something, or a waitress or a waiter at a restaurant, and they're kind of surprised that, well, what? What do you mean, what's my day like? So, but that's Brunswick.
Yeah. So what's in the way? I mean, when I hear, Josh is not allowed to answer that question.
Well, he's a visitor.
Is this your first visit?
No, I grew up in Waycross.
Oh, what do you think the special sauce is?
I should have kept my mouth shut. I mean, the things downtown Brunswick, first of all, is beautiful. I mean, you've got a historic building stock that's really attractive and authentic, and that's
Great
something
bones.
that you can't replicate. I mean, all these new town centers that are popping up that are trying to replicate downtown magic, they don't. I mean, you don't have to be an architectural critic to go somewhere and feel if it's real or not. So this is a real and beautiful place. I think another big advantage is all the residential neighborhoods are still attached to downtown. That's also pretty unusual. In most places, the 1950s and 60s, urban renewal or road construction severed off those connections. So, one of the things I'd point out about downtown Macon is although the lofts are really expensive, the residential neighborhoods have not seen any appreciable price increases in the past 20 years. So you can still rent a place that you can walk or bike downtown for $400 a month and get a 3-bedroom place right outside of downtown. So, I mean, that's a big advantage. I think it's going to mitigate the worst pressures that you're going to experience. The other thing I'd say is y'all hustle. The people I've had experiences with over the past couple of months in visiting Macon and talking on the phone and visiting in Macon, there are a lot of really ambitious people in Brunswick who are not going to tolerate not making major progress. And that resonates with me a lot. I mean, I like a big challenge. That's why I'm in Macon. I saw this and said, oh, I can do this, right? So I think you've got hustle. And then the last thing I'd say is you show up. This is an incredible crowd. I couldn't draw this crowd unless I was in really, really big trouble. So the fact that y'all have come out optimistically to learn more about how you can help is probably the best thing that Brunswick has going.
You can give yourselves a round. I felt a little stirring of hands. The one thing that nobody mentioned, and I think maybe it's interesting in a lot of ways, is the water. Brunswick sits on a very nice piece of water that the sun happens to set over if you manage to be in a place where you can actually observe that. What do you think? You talked about the waterfront before and development there. What are your thoughts?
Well, I have to because I actually used to swim in that water, right? So there were pillars there, and we would jump in the water. We didn't realize it was totally unsafe.
Can we still do that?
So
let's
that
all
was
go
before
swimming
the
tonight.
boats. Before the boats were there. Brunswick has always had a beautiful waterfront. It's always been, as a kid, as I grew up, I was always looking at the connection between, the horizon and the way the water connected with the land. And even as I ride on 95 or I'm coming into Brunswick, or coming over the bridge, you just look and see the water and the marsh and how beautiful it is. Individuals used to really go downtown and be a part. There were great things down there. And there's still great things down there, but it was more of a family-oriented area where we had, things like crests and stores that the family and communities knew, and we shopped there. And those are the things that's missing, and we don't have that shopping piece there. We have the restaurants, but we don't have that shopping piece that was a big presence for our community, like Sears and all the other stores. But the waterfront gives an opportunity to bring families in. A lot of cities have looked at waterfronts and actually put parks and put things there that will draw kids in or draw families in. It could be a big benefit. We have a huge and gorgeous Mary Ross Park that offers a lot of opportunities for us to do things, bring in concerts. And that's what most of the young people are looking for. They want to go downtown. They want to be a part of downtown. But they want something to do when they're there. They can eat, but then when they eat, they're gone. So they want more to that. And that's what we had when we were growing up. We had more to do because there were shops. We window shop. We didn't have any money. So we just window shop, right? So, but those are just some of the aspects that waterfront brings. And it was always beautiful to see. We had events down there. So it was a part of what we did.
Others on that, yeah.
I think one reason the waterfront may not have come up in those answers is because right now there's not really a strong connection between the downtown core and the waterfront. We do have this beautiful waterfront, western facing, might I add, great sunsets. Walking out of the meeting last night, I stood there for a second and turned around and just said, wow, how is there not somewhere I can go sit at the bar and grab a drink and watch this? How is there not more connectivity to that? And I think there's two major answers. One is Bay Street, and for those of you who don't know, Bay Street is a 4-lane DOT highway with a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, and it is extremely difficult for pedestrian traffic to cross. We've got a building right on the other side of Bay Street next to Mary Ross Park. I've had to take people on tours walking across Bay Street. You get the flashers going, hope that the trucks half a mile down slow down before they get there, and then you get to the railroad track right on the other end. And I remember this vividly. A few months ago, I was giving a tour to someone, and she had her daughter with her in a stroller, and I had to help her physically carry the stroller over the railroad tracks because there's a 6 or 8 inch gap right there, and you couldn't wheel it over. So the waterfront's right there. You can see it, you can feel it, but there's not the ability to go use it. And I think the marina is a beautiful piece of property. I envy them for everything that they have right there, but that right there shows you what it can be. If there's a boardwalk where people after dinner can go take a stroll and watch the sunset, or have a reason to go connect to the waterfront, whether it's going to rent a kayak or anything like that, I think that would add a huge draw to downtown. Because right now, even though you're 2 blocks from the water, there's really no connection to it.
Matthew, let's hear it for the waterfront. So, Matt, how do you view it as an asset when you're thinking about what we have here?
Well, I think the waterfront is definitely an asset, and with the marina property, you know, that's a huge asset that's just waiting for the right time to for something to happen there. But you know, Michael's right. There is that wall of Bay Street that, with that there, probably the full use of the waterfront isn't going to happen. But with this many people who are interested, we can go to DOT as a community and say, this road's too big. We went as a community in the 60s to DOT and said, we want a road around downtown. So we can do it again and say, well, that was too big. We want a smaller road now. But once somebody can get across Bay Street and after dinner walk down there, because it's only 2 blocks, but if you can walk safely across there and look at the sunset, you know, then I think we'll start to see pressure on others who have property along the waterfront, that maybe they'll start to consolidate elsewhere and other development opportunities will come up.
So we've described a community of wonderful people, interesting characters who love each other, hang out together, have beautiful old buildings, a waterfront, great spirit and all that. So what's wrong? Why isn't this happening? Why have we been talking about the great potential of this place for a long time without realizing it?
People need to put their money where their mouth is and make plans happen. There's a million plans out there. RSVP Brunswick, for those of you who don't know, it's a fantastic, fantastic master plan for downtown that Matthew and the DDA have put together. There's Blueprint Brunswick, which is another similar one. There are fantastic plans for downtown. If you saw some of these ideas, food truck parks, more activity by Mary Ross Park, softening the streetscapes, they're fantastic plans and not enough action.
So why do we think that there's inertia on that? Because I think probably most of the people in this room have seen the RSVP plans, or they probably wouldn't be in this room. But why do we think things feel stalled, or do they feel stalled and aren't as stalled as they seem?
Well, I think that with the RSVP, the purpose of that plan was to have a vision and a master plan for the DDA's work that was broken down into smaller chunks. So you eat the elephant one bite at a time, not try to attack the whole thing. And because we've done over half of the action items that were in that plan, and we still continue to knock some down as time goes along. But I think getting those things done has started to attract some people like Michael and his dad and Courtney Prince, who's now on my board, to realize that things are happening downtown and they're coming and they're, thank you, bringing your money, and making things happen. Because without the investors who are willing to take a chance and buy a building and rehab it, it's not going to happen.
Others, what's holding us back?
I don't know if I really have an answer for that, but I'll take the mic since you're pressuring.
I am pressuring you. Yes, I am pressuring you. There's no question.
I think probably also in addition, and I think I said this maybe in a meeting or so, but we do have a lot of plans, a lot of wonderful plans that are all over the place, but then it also boils down to leadership as well. Because in order for something to move forward, you do need some leadership. And I said, and I'll say this time, and maybe it was, I didn't know whether I was on the outside looking in, but I feel like we have all of these organizations that are not working together, and it calls for working together, not only at the government level, but it means working together at the community level as well. And I think sometimes when you have a plan that is out there, and I'm not quite sure, you know, everyone in this room may have gone out and looked at Blueprint Brunswick and all of the other plans that are out there, but when you have the common person who does not or has not or feels as though they have not had any input or don't understand it, then you know there's some things there. So you have to have the leadership in order to get that done. You have to have the leadership not only to bring the plans together and put it into action along with the dollars that are available, the dollars that are coming in, but then you also have to have the leadership at the community level as well, so that the residents understand what it is that we're trying to do. Because then that way, when the city of Brunswick is successful at all of this, it's not just the city of Brunswick, it's not just the government of Brunswick, it's not just the developer, but it is the city as a whole that has been successful. And when we're all successful, then it makes our small, big town an even better place to live.
I'd say you do well under pressure. So one last question for the group, then we're going to start. Somebody is collecting cards with questions, right? Are any of them tough? Okay, well, bring me the tough list too, because this is too easy. So one of the things that we talked about a lot in the prep work for this was the sense that Brunswick has an issue with its image. And I think the image has to do with crime. I think the image has to do with when we talk about what it's like, at 5 o'clock and the sidewalks roll up, what it's like here after dark. And to some degree, maybe an image that there's just not a lot going on down here all the time. How much truth do you think there is in some of this image stuff? And how do we get the message out that there's a reason to come to this? And we talked about this a little bit earlier. Maggie, this is interested in what your thoughts are on this, because you've got the most at stake. Well, I don't know, you and Michael have the most at stake in this.
Yeah, so there is a perception of crime downtown. As for me, I'm at work every morning at 5 o'clock. You know, there's not many people on the streets. You don't see a whole lot of traffic. There are always plenty of city cops riding around. I never feel unsafe. We've never had any problems down there as far as anything being broken into, any of us being accosted on the street or anything like that. So as far as the crime down there, it's really non-existent in our little area.
So sometimes we equate crime to homelessness, or we equate crime to the residents. And you see from what Maggie's saying that she's not impacted being an owner of a business downtown. The vision that people see, and I say this because I look at people's Facebooks, my friends that are from Brunswick, and they say St. Simons and other places, but they're really from Brunswick, which I don't understand. So people just associate downtown, even though you don't have the crime, because there is homelessness and there are areas that need work. And going back to the question you asked before, just the question you just asked, a lot of times the reason we're not successful is we want to work outside and then come in, when we need to be working inside and then come out. And that's why we don't have success. You can work around a lot of things, but it doesn't change the core of what Brunswick is and who Brunswick is. So we need to look, in order to have success, we got to start within the community itself and work our way out, because we're not going to be inclusive if we don't do that. But the homelessness is not a factor. You're going to have homelessness, and the areas are not a factor if you're going to have businesses. But you'll see that individuals don't associate themselves because they feel like it's nothing there. It's kind of desert. So that's one of the reasons that you don't see more people or more youth that are coming in to that. And
So on the perception side of it, I think that people definitely have, I don't want to say legitimate, but they have a perception of Brunswick being unsafe. I think there are a few factors to that. On the homeless side of it that Jeff just mentioned, I know there are homeless downtown. I don't think it's as big of a problem as it's made out to be. I think the issue is there are no other people on the street at 9 p.m. There's not the full-time residents down there. If you have 1,000 full-time residents down there, walking down the street when you're the only one on it and you feel unsafe is not even a thought in your mind, because there's 40 other people on the same block. And also coming into downtown, whether you're coming down Gloucester from 17 or coming down Bay Street or 341 from 95, it's not a very welcoming entrance. Gloucester in particular, there's a lot of blighted buildings. There's plenty that have been renovated and are being renovated, but there are some very unsightly buildings, some that probably need to be torn down, some that need a fresh coat of paint, at varying levels of repair, but that's their first thought coming downtown. When we bring friends downtown and I'm talking to them about how fantastic of a place this is and how much exciting stuff's going on, and you kind of want them to avert their eyes for about 45 seconds coming down Gloucester Street and say, no, we're getting there, I swear, it's just a little further.
You just drop something on the floor and say, would you get that for me?
Yeah, turn the music up really loud and try and get them distracted. But I think that's another side of it. And then also, there is not a lot of crime in downtown Brunswick. The meeting this morning for downtown business owners, Matthew went through a few recent crime statistics, and it was someone left an old rusty bike leaning against a tree, unlocked, and it went missing.
Oh my God.
Whoa. But that's the reality. There's not major issues going on, and then when there are, unfortunately, as in any neighborhood, there are real crimes that happen. If you open the newspaper and it's front and center of that day's edition, murderer turns himself in. I mean, that tells everyone in the area. That's a lot of eyes on that newspaper. That brightens people up. Whoa, that there's a murderer. I mean, it's a very untrue perception of how Brunswick is being shown in some of the eyes of people who are not actively involved. Because, like Maggie, I mean, I've been downtown at 5 a.m., at 10 p.m. by myself. Before we had any of these buildings full, I was the only person down there. Never felt unsafe. Never had any issues. There really is not actual crime. It's just a perception that is really false.
Yeah, Michael's right. The first thing is if you have residents and they're walking their dogs and it's after dark, nobody checks crime stats to decide if they feel safe or not. Right? Nobody does that. They step out of their car and they make a gut decision based on a million factors that they feel and sense and see. And so the cues of safe people being around and the streets being full of safe people instantly changes that. Mostly. I will say I feel more uncomfortable at the country club in Macon than I do around homeless people in downtown. But now all the country club people are coming downtown, which makes me realize I'm not that cool anymore. And this is a little bit difficult, too, when you get displaced from your favorite restaurants. When you go to your favorite place and you're not a regular anymore because there are 5,000 other people trying to eat there. That part sucks. My point is that when all the country club, that you're always fighting that intolerance of new perceptions, right? As you're growing the audience in downtown, you're reaching less and less tolerant people as you go. And eventually we're going to get to where we have tourists who really don't want to tolerate. So country club people are complaining to me about stuff that I've lived with for 20 years and I didn't even realize was an issue. I'm like, really? How safe is your life that this has never come up? So I guess my 2 points are, number one, you need more residential development. And number two, ignore the criticism about your image around crime. Ignore it. Put it in a category where you say, yes, I understand, and don't do anything about it, and stop worrying. Stop beating yourself up.
So, and I will make one comment as a recovering journalist. When I was the managing editor of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I forbade individual crime stories on our front page just because it gave them an unfair perception of crime. We report on crime, we have to, that's our job, but we also have to treat it with perspective. And so just for what it's worth, for anyone out there who's listening. Hold on, I need to get my timer set. Oh my God, I'm getting an ad. Okay, good. Okay. So I will also say, not only is this a record crowd, this is a record fat deck of index cards. So I'm gonna try to get through as many of these as we can, and I've scanned through these, and these are good questions. So for anyone, until I decide you're taking too long to answer, how do we address the derelict neighborhoods and slumlords without pushing out existing homeowners and residents?
Well,
not that slumlords are bad.
No, they have a place. The city has made great strides recently with the code enforcement department. They're staffed up to 3 people now who can actually get around to more than the piles of illegal dumping to try to get on top of this. The other thing that we have going for us is the land bank, which is still, in its second year now, Mayor? And that's its purpose, is to get these derelict properties into hands that will do something with them at a price that makes it affordable to do something. And I think as we go along with some of these projects and some of these early land bank things get going, we'll see other landlords who really don't have any interest in being a landlord, but they've done it for years because that's what they've done. We'll start turning properties over to the land bank or to developers because they'll see, oh, there's value in my property now and I can get out from under it.
Do we think there's a problem with slumlords? I mean, people who don't take care of the... I'm sorry, unless you have a microphone or you're married to me, you're not allowed to answer the question from the audience. I know, I recognized. I mean, do we think it's a problem? Let's be straight.
Yeah, I think apathetic landlords or slumlords are a problem.
Okay. How much, part two, how much new housing is needed?
We don't know. We're doing a study right now to find that out.
Okay. The study is similar to the one that Macon did, and we're eager for the results, which should be coming out when? October? Wait, you're the new guy with New City, Brunswick. You probably know everything. Stay tuned. If you stay south of Gloucester and the few blocks, if you stay south of Gloucester and the few blocks of downtown Newcastle, you would think Brunswick has good bones. But if you venture north, you will see quite a different picture. What type of residential renewal is necessary to benefit this area? Again, anyone.
So one of the things I talk about is, creating a program for individuals or families that will allow them to become homeowners. One of the things that we don't see, and the reason we do have slumlords is that they buy up the properties, and we don't give families a chance to buy into the property and create some kind of family wealth. If you own a home, that one of the biggest things you can do with your home, it creates wealth within the families. And right, yeah, once you pass a certain point, you do see those things. So if we can somehow create a program that, or work within ourselves to create a program that targets or works with families that can create a homeowner, then you'll see all these changes within that community itself. Because not only do they become financially stable, but they create wealth for the whole family. So, and going back to that question, we don't want slumlords, but I'll give you an example. I had a call today from a lady, family of 4. She was on Social Security, but didn't have any income. Her income was only $600 a month. Wasn't receiving any financial assistance, food stamps, or anything else. So ideally, we want to be able to place her into some kind of housing because she has kids. She loves her kids. But ideally, she can't afford $1,000. So we actually work with some of them, I would say slumlords or however you call them, to impact those families because financially they can't afford it. So every time we drop a new residence or a new business and we don't create homeowners, we're actually moving individuals out of that community who can't afford to be in that community.
I don't have a perfect answer, but I think regardless of whether you're south of Gloucester, in the heart of downtown, north of Gloucester, there needs to be a variety of options, as everyone I think has touched on to some point earlier, whether that's downtown lofts, shotgun homes north of Gloucester, renovating some of the beautiful old Victorian homes in Old Town. It's going to be a mix of residential options. And as Josh mentioned earlier, I didn't know that number that you mentioned right outside of the downtown core in Macon. You can get a 3-bedroom home for $400 a month. I mean, that's exactly what, that's the type of mix that we need. We need the market rate apartments, we need the affordable housing, we need everything in between. It's a full community effort. We're not just looking for one subset.
Okay.
And just because
Go
that
ahead.
touched a little nerve there.
Go ahead.
Because north of Gloucester, we do have Newtown, which is almost its own historic district, and there are some really nice bones in that neighborhood. You'll come around the corner. If you go out 341 to L Street, turn right. When you get to Orange Square, look up that street. There are some great craftsman-style homes along that block there. And it's just that a lot of them are covered up with overgrown bushes or shrubbery, and you don't see them. But you'll come across little gems where grandma's lived there forever, and she takes care of her house, and there are some good bones there. That's one of the good things about Brunswick. We've got the Victorian area Old Town, but then we have the slightly early 20th century in Newtown and Town Commons. We have some of the earliest ranch-style houses in the state are found in Windsor Park. Urbana has some great little places in there. We have a huge variety of housing, within a mile of downtown.
Okay. So Maggie, I promised you would get to talk about this, and one of our guests out there raised a question. So how do we address the parking issue? Or is there a parking issue, Maggie?
There is a terrible parking issue, and it's every day. As you mentioned earlier, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, it's so busy downtown. People have to ride around 3, 4, 5 times to find a parking place. Some people won't do it, they'll just keep going, assuming that businesses are packed or the bank's full or, my restaurant's full when it's not. So the library was a great idea and what they did with it, but it did not give me any more parking. You bring in 100 extra people for a class down there, and it kills my business. I mean, it absolutely does. So to me, before we can make Brunswick grow, we've got to give people a place to park. And how do we solve that? I don't know. Parking garage? I mean, there's lots of cities that don't have a parking problem. So that's got to be a big focus for us because it's definitely killing me day to day.
Matthew, I don't know if you've got anything to add to the parking dilemma, or if you know of anything in the works or discussions.
Well, one of the things we're working on is some additional signage to point people to where there is additional parking that's not on the street. Some of it is merchant-related or business-related that, you know, we need businesses to tell their employees, don't park in front of the business, you know, park behind, park over in this street. I worked in a very large city for a long time, and if we were caught parking, you know, on the street and not in the garage that was 2 blocks away, we got a serious talking to. So some of it is just habit, because for a long time, there's been plenty of spaces downtown and not a whole lot there, and parking was not a problem. But some of it goes to businesses that and not you. Your employees all park exactly where they're supposed to park. But then the library. Does everybody know there's a parking lot behind the library? I know last night I pulled in there and it was half empty, but there were 100 people in. So, oh, did I get there early? I didn't get there that early. I thought I was running late.
No bickering.
No, we're not bickering. This is friendly. But, you know, we did a parking study, and it did make some suggestions about these other surface lots. One of them is Mansfield Street, which isn't really going to help you a whole lot, but it's being redone right now. But, you know, with the Oglethorpe Block redevelopment, parking is definitely something that needs to be considered there when they're considering the development.
Did all these new units in downtown Macon create a parking crisis?
You're always going to have a parking crisis. You got to put it in the category of crime perceptions and not worry about it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's the reality. Now we did get to the point. We don't require any loft developer to provide any parking. Zero. So eventually we got to the point where our street spaces were full. And so we implemented parking meters in June of last year. So it's been a little over a year. And your street front parking is a premium product, and it can't be free. So the most convenient places have got to go to a fee-based structure. And people who are going to be downtown for 8 hours at a time have got to walk 2 blocks. And so that's what we have now is our residents and our employees park in the decks. And the great thing about that is you don't need that many deck spaces because the workers use them for 8 hours in the morning and the residents use them for 8 hours at night. So the same space gets 2 cars. But yeah, the street front spaces in front of the Rookery, they cost $1.25 an hour now. And people still complain. So parking complaints will be constant. Managing the supply appropriately where the most precious spaces are priced that way is a good solution. And the rest you just got to weather the storm.
Okay.
I get to say that because I'm from out of town. He can't.
Yeah. No,
If we were in Macon, what I would say is parking is a problem, and it's something we're constantly monitoring. We're trying to make sure that spaces are available in the most convenient spaces possible. You know, like that?
I'll see that gets posted on the Macon Facebook page. Since downtown living is a priority for community revitalization, what legal protections do the neighborhoods have or need to save, protect, and create a new historic feel, architecture so that the restorations and new construction complement the existing desirable character of our British-founded port city? Martin, is this you? No? Okay.
Well, now,
I didn't see any misplaced U's or anything, so I wasn't sure if it was actually British.
now new construction in the historic district and the downtown especially is subject to its own set of design guidelines. And the design guidelines are written so that you do not want to create a false sense of history. You don't want to recreate a building from the 1880s. You want to build a building that you can look at and say, yep, that's a new building, but it fits in with everything. Because look at the way downtown developed. You know, we have the few antebellum buildings, those tabby ones, but then we have the late Victorian era buildings, and then we've got some really great mid-century buildings. Time marched on, and downtown built out as time went along. So there are guidelines in place to make sure that whatever gets built new is compatible, but then most of downtown is fully developed, so it's rehab, and the exteriors are protected. You know, if something is really going to fall over, then there might be a demolition. But for the most part, those buildings are protected, and there's pretty stringent guidelines that are being rewritten as we speak to make them easier to understand.
Okay. Josh, this is a question for you. And this is a case where our audience will hear a different question, even with the same words that I'm giving to you, and you'll know what I mean. I know that Macon has attracted a boutique hotel recently. What do you think the impact of having 100 or so people downtown every night will have on business, both retail and restaurants? Seems like a quick and easy way to add the people for business to chase.
Yeah, no question. You're absolutely right. I don't think we would have been ready for tourism without the base of the residents, because we wouldn't have the shopping and dining that you're talking about wanting, right? So I do think it's not a chicken or egg problem. You've got to have the residents first. My perspective on we're working on 5 hotels with a total of 570 rooms right now, and we have 0. So this is going to be a massive change for downtown Macon. My perspective is that it is going to be as significant as the moment we added the first lofts, which was unbelievable. It was like somebody turned the lights on. The store. So I think this is going to be just as significant a transition point as it was 5-6 years ago when we really started digging in on lofts. I think tourism is going to be the next big boom. I don't know how many of y'all have been to Asheville lately. Asheville just passed, yesterday Asheville passed a law on a 1-year moratorium on hotel rooms. They're full. So people are desperate for an authentic experience in a cool place with local beer. You're ready to serve that up. I do think a hotel is a quick trip towards juicing the streets and pulling in some money from outside your community that gets to stay here and recirculate. One of the things that always bothers me about affordable housing is we only talk about depressing the value of the housing or the cost of the housing on a monthly basis, and we never talk about lifting incomes. I mean, there are 2 sides to that equation. And so growing an economy with more economic opportunities for diverse people to own their own houses and own their own businesses can help right that equation the other way, and maybe even in ways where they walk away wealthier with property that's appreciating. So it's going to be huge. I'm really excited about it. It's a Marriott Tribute Hotel. I think the only other ones in the state right now are in Savannah and Atlanta. Just to boast.
Thank you. So I hadn't heard it described this way before, causeway phobia, which I think we all know what that means, that people who cross the causeway don't want to come back. How do you overcome that? And secondary, let this group ask, but there's curiosity about, did Macon have success in getting people from the suburbs into the core downtown? And by the way, I didn't realize that St. Simons was a suburb. That's kind of a terrifying concept for me. But how do we attract people back across the causeway once we've had a beer and settle in on the other side?
Well, I think they are coming back. I know people who are moving into my neighborhood in Old Town that have left St. Simons or left the outlying areas. It's like, in Atlanta, the in-town neighborhoods started to be repopulated because people got sick of the commute, or there were cool restaurants all of a sudden, so, hey, I could live down there.
I think you get them to come back over by giving them a reason to. And it's not just, hey, there's this cool new thing going on downtown. It's, hey, come try this cool new restaurant. Hey, let's go on a walk by the waterfront. You have to give them something that they can't get over there. And for everyone who lives or has spent time on St. Simons, there's some great restaurants, but they get old pretty quick, and you need a little bit of variety. So, personally, I was very happy when Reed's Apothecary opened up. I think I'm probably there on average 2 to 3 times a week, and it's a fantastic restaurant. I think if we give people reasons to come to Brunswick, they'll be there.
I think that in order to do it, then the experience has to be like a destination. So we all know that everybody comes down to this area, to the coast, to experience St. Simons and Sea Island and Jekyll and all of those places. So I think when you have a local population that's already here, then you need to create a destination, create an experience downtown that they're not getting over there. And when I say the residents are not getting over there, and they say, oh, I'm headed over to Brunswick, I'm headed to downtown Brunswick. But it needs to create an atmosphere and an experience.
Okay, and was this an issue in Macon of attracting people from the suburbs into the central city?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the harder audiences to win, and it's definitely one of the ones that's only fallen into place recently. But I was telling y'all earlier that people from the suburbs have started showing up downtown and taking my table at the Rookery, and so it's a double-edged sword. I think if you're on the right track and you build a compelling place, a place that you all love, it's going to be contagious. And so that's what we're trying to constantly cultivate and conserve, is this unique place with family-owned businesses that are operated by people you know. There are people in your suburbs, whether St. Simons or Jekyll or whatever, who are going to feel cool for dipping their toe in that water, right? And so that's still the experience I want it to be. I want it to be a little edgy and urban and fun and diverse and unique and memorable. So I think you lean in on those things and you don't soften it up to try and make it more tolerable for a suburban audience, right? You're going to win those people by being the best you can be.
So there are a few questions where people, I guess, weren't satisfied with what we said about Bay Street, about really going after that issue and what plans and where we are and all of that. I don't know if anyone has any more. I don't know, Matthew, if you can add more to it. But there seems to be a number of people who are interested in getting Bay Street taken care of.
Well, the city did make a stab at getting a road diet on Bay Street, and we got the flashing lights. My favorite comment is we asked DOT for a blue shirt and we got red pants. But it is always on everybody's mind. We got a proposal from DOT about Gloucester Street that seems pretty great. We're hoping that we're expecting a proposal from DOT for 341. We're hoping that because we have called and we've complained and we've talked to them, that their initial proposal comes back as something better than what it is. Now, is it going to be perfect? We don't know, but at least they're making some effort to realize, oh, we adopted complete streets and we need to build better roads. So I guess stay tuned for now until we find out what they're going to do. But when you have the opportunity to talk to your representatives, or if you run into somebody from DOT, say, hey, you know, that road's really big and we don't need that much road.
Well, the DOT, if I remember correctly, is more or less run by a board. When we have a representative from our congressional district on that board, is that a person who would welcome some input from the constituents here?
I don't know about welcome, but certainly tolerate input, yes.
Or be informed by, enlightened by.
Enlightened by, yes.
Okay, there's a lot of talk about setting up creative financing for new businesses to come into downtown Brunswick. But what about existing businesses and initiatives like subsidizing billboards on I-95, increased parking signage, maps at key parking for orientation, et cetera?
Matthew.
We talked about, or I mentioned parking signage a little earlier. Maps, we have that map in the Brunswick News right before First Friday, or right after the first week of the month, that the Visitors Bureau hands out thousands of those out at the I-95 Welcome Center. We have looked at billboards. Harvest did actually some billboards with the Main Street Alliance program. That's going to re-roll out later this year, and that would be an opportunity to try to share space on billboards. What was the other? There was something else.
Billboards, signage for parking, and I think that was it. And just general assistance for existing businesses.
Well, and advertising too. If you,
Yeah.
you know, if you're doing something, if Maggie is having, what is it, wild rice and something soup? What is that? Creamy chicken and wild rice soup.
When is the creamy chicken and wild rice?
And she.
Maybe tomorrow.
You know,
Everybody lunch at Maggie Mae's tomorrow.
we're happy to help promote that, but we need to know what's going on. You know, if nobody tells us, oh, we're having creamy chicken and wild rice soup today, and that's a big demand, we can't advertise that. So we need to know, hey, I'm having a special, Crawford's having a songwriter something, we can help promote that.
Okay. Here's another. I'm trying to find trends in these questions. Here's another one. How does a college fit into this? I mean, if you go back to the James Fallows quote that I read earlier, the last thing he said, but he said it for emphasis, was a connection to a local college. So anyone can jump in there, but how could you see the college fitting into a part of this solution? Feel free to dream big.
I think the college
And the
has
college president's still here, so she can take notes.
I'll be nice.
She was assigned some stuff last time we were here, so yeah.
I don't know of any small town college that doesn't have a small town. Any school of this size needs somewhere for their students to go, things for their students to do, and no institution, big or small, is going to exist on an island on its own. You need places when the families come in town for Parents' Weekend that they can take them out. You need a hotel for them to stay at that's not out by the highway. I think naturally you have a few thousand students here, and what we're talking about right now is getting bodies downtown. To the previous question, what can we do for the existing businesses? Get people through their doors. We need more bodies downtown patronizing the businesses. I think there's a natural connection with the student base, and I think if they had the ability to have a landing spot downtown, not saying the college needs to open anything, but if they had a trolley stop or something, if there were easier ways for them to find out about what's going on, I think that would help their enrollment and their retention. I think it would help downtown businesses and revitalization. It's a natural synergy that I think is just sitting right in front of us.
Therese, you're a trustee. I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay, I completely agree with everything you said, but I look at it from a different perspective. I think that the college having a bigger role in downtown means access. And that means access for a lot of the families that live downtown or in those areas. We have, as I stated earlier when we first started, our agency works with our low-income families and children. And so when you have on the other side of town, is what I'll say, and I say that in perspective of where the college is located at now, the campus we're currently on, is that when you have on the other side of town, you have students who have all the potential in the world but don't have the access. Those that would be able to contribute to the city of Brunswick, Glenn County, but they can't because they have not been given the opportunity. It would be amazing for those of you to know that we have students, we have kids who do not feel like they even belong on a college campus. And so when you locate, or the parts of the college is located to give access to a different population, then it allows for the diversity, not only the diversity of the campus and the population of this college, but it also enhances and builds on the strengths of what we have already said. One of the strengths that we said that we have here in the city of Brunswick. And I have to say in that a lot of times people feel like just because an individual is low income or from a lower socioeconomic status, then there is no potential. That they don't have the ability to excel and exceed, when the case really is they just don't have the opportunities. The opportunities haven't been afforded to them. So I think having some access to the college in the downtown area will be great for our families that live in that area and on that side of town.
So piggybacking on what Tree said, when we're talking about the college and the connection, one of the things we suffer here in Brunswick is the lack of transportation, which is a real big issue. Yeah. So,
well, hold on.
Okay.
Since it's a question from the audience. So, what about the transportation issue?
We would love to connect the college with transportation. In most cities that have colleges, they might have transportation that's provided because there's an afternoon nightlife and the kids get to participate. But here in our county, we don't have transportation, so there's a lack of. Transportation is necessary for jobs and employment, and we have a lack of for that. It's real difficult for families and individuals to gain employment or keep employment because they have no transportation, which is something we need to work on. One of the things I think we haven't worked together on with the school is to identify how the school and the community itself can benefit from a transportation system. There's been efforts more or less led by agencies and actually government. But we haven't come to a consensus that this is a must. You know, transportation should be one of our highest priorities. We don't want anyone to feel like if they're employed on the north end of town or south end of town, that keeping their job is not relevant because they can't get to work. So we need to look at it, and we need to look at it for the college because that's going to drive foot traffic. It's going to bring those kids down, though, and I say kids because some are much older, but they're going to bring them down to downtown.
They're still kids.
Yeah, they're still kids. Okay. To enjoy, what's going on downtown, the new businesses, the new restaurants, and everything else that's going on.
Other thoughts on transportation, transit? No. Don't want to suppress applause.
I happen to know something about this. There is.
Well, I guess that will have an effect on the answer then.
It will, won't it?
Yeah.
I won't tell you what I'd like. I'll tell you what's going on. The city did receive a grant to do a study about what type of transportation and routes would work, and that has just started, right? Okay, it'll be ready this fall, and I'm sure the college has been questioned about that or given input in that, I hope.
Well,
If
we
not,
could
we'll
work this
fix
out
that.
right here if we.
Yeah. Well, I see easy solution to me has always been limited one route, swing around through Old Town and downtown, out Altama or MLK and Altama because it has a huge wide median, just like New Orleans. It can run down the median. It can hit the college, Brunswick High, the mall, Fletsy, come back downtown. So with one route, you hit all the stops. Now, what this study will result in, we'll see. But anyway, you asked, so.
So my fear is continuously having studies and not actually having action,
Well,
right?
this study is actually tied to money on the other side of the study for implementation.
Okay.
So the study gets done, and then there's money over here for implementation, which if some transit system gets implemented here, you all need to promise to ride it because it has to make money. It has to stay in operation for more than.
Well, it's a
10
good way
years.
to avoid DUIs too.
Right.
Not that that's an issue for everyone, that everyone else is thinking about it. Last question, and then we need to close. Although I've got a lot more. I guess we could stay all night and do selfies with everyone too. So one word, if you could wake up tomorrow and make something happen for Brunswick, what one word comes to mind? Start with Jeff and go on down.
Oh, wow, that's a deep question.
That's a lot of words.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, if I could wake up tomorrow and have one thing happen for Brunswick, it would be economic development. It would be giving the individuals in the community an opportunity to create wealth within their families and within themselves, so that they can understand and they can actually experience what they need to experience to be great citizens. We do need more taxpayers. I know the town that's going to benefit everybody. So if I could do anything, I would flood businesses here. I would flood individuals who could utilize the services that Brunswick has to offer.
Michael.
Housing.
Just like Jeff, one word. Very good.
Housing.
Entertainment.
We could do this every night.
It's fun entertainment.
Yeah. Oh, entertaining entertainment. Therese.
I'm not good at one-word answers, so I'm going to say an intersection between economic development and community development.
Well, I'm going to say housing because that's I see one of the most important things we can do is increase the number of heads in beds downtown.
Okay.
Housing, I'm with you.
Okay. Let's give a great round of applause for these guys. And I'm sorry we couldn't get to all these. They're great questions. I tried to at least hit the topics. Before I release this microphone, there's one thing I just want to say. I spend a lot of time writing and reading about the mess our country's in, and this sense that we're just dysfunctional as a people. I don't think that's true. And I think if you look around this room, this is not dysfunction. This is sort of what the idea was in the beginning, that people would come together, overcome differences. I suspect there's not consistency in political views in this room right now in terms of national politics. But I think this room is united by a desire to do something good for Brunswick. And I think that the more that we can seize upon those things that unite us, the more we can heal the country. So I think this is very important. I hope you do too. And now, let's close it out.
Darren Peach and I have a stand-up routine to do now. So just to close this out, entertaining entertainment. But I just wanted to save, kind of after we've gone through the evening, to save this moment for now, to say that this was a college event, but it's all about the community. And I would really like to recognize all of the College of Coastal Georgia Foundation board members that are here tonight. I have one standing here. Therese, if you'll stand, and Bert and Meredith that were key in leading this event. Thank you. And then all of our other trustees that are here that I see. Thank you, because lifeblood of what we did. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We took note of the trustees who aren't here.
They'll be getting letters.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that, that thank you goes for everyone in the room, and I guess, if we want to break it down in stars, I know many of you were here for all three of our events this year, and so you get 3 stars, and those of you that were made it to 1, we'll give you 2 stars no matter what. But the key is that, this is recognition for all the people that have a passion for Brunswick and taking it forward. Certainly the panelists and all of the stakeholders. I think that it's worth mentioning also that there are many people in this room that started this many years ago, decades ago, if not longer, and those people have been talking about it and working hard to carry the torch, and so we greatly appreciate all of you, and we just want to join your effort at this point. At least one person in this room appreciated something I said at one of the earlier events. I said my heart is in Brunswick, and I thought I'd add a little context to that tonight, because my heart is in Brunswick. And what that means is I came to Brunswick for the first time with my family in 1981 from over 1,000 miles away. And I came to the city of Brunswick, and I remember distinctly the things that I saw and the smell. And I came here without having any clue what I was going to see. But as I drive into Brunswick, down Gloucester Street, Newcastle Street, nearly every day during the week and on the weekends, and I drag friends over to bring them to dinner, and my wife and I come every chance we get because we love it in downtown Brunswick, and we continue to come. And I think of certain things that just really make me love Brunswick, and just a couple things is there's a really majestic, tall palm tree, and those of you that know me know that I love palm trees, but it's a Canary Island date palm near the fire station on the, I guess it would be on the right-hand side of the road. And every time I see that tree, I was there the first time I came here 36 years ago, and I think 37. It's just a wonderful tree, and the fire station, and the city hall, and the old city hall, and Glen Academy, and the churches, and it's just a beautiful place, and we are so blessed and privileged to have it, along with the islands and the rest of the Golden Isles. So really, it's our responsibility to be stewards of that. And we need to carry it forward. It's been here for hundreds of years, and it can only get better. So let's do that. Let's really do that. So I've got 2 asks. One of them is, again, I said this before, when you talk about Brunswick, you talk about a city on the rise, beautiful Brunswick, a place that's really going to be better and better, but it's wonderful now. Don't talk about issues that all cities have and problems. Don't carry that to Atlanta and other places. Talk about how great Brunswick and the rest of the islands and Jekyll and St. Simons, Cumberland, all those places are. The second thing is really easy. Tonight when you leave this place, get in your car, get on your bicycle, and head downtown Brunswick and eat dinner and go get a drink or go get a coffee or go get whatever you want to get. But let's head down there right now and just enjoy it. Thank you very much.